Did you do any of the same sex stuff in college?
Not well, these collegiate events in the Midwest always have like a set of fun dances at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
And there's always like a same-sex rumba or a same-sex
Mm.
tango or something like that. I
Mm.
think for fun, we would just like find another person. So I did
So
that a couple
yeah,
times.
maybe for context, so you're competing in the pro am right now.
Correct,
You
yes.
dance with a male leader,
Yes, I dance
right?
with a male leader as a follow,
Uh-huh.
and I dance with his wife and professional partner as a lead.
As a leader, you do both.
Yes.
It's smooth.
I do
Because
both.
doesn't it not the same comp or same?
So competitively, I'm right now only doing smooth with as a follow and standard as
Yeah.
a leader, but like certainly in the studio.
So I mean, not to get like super touchy right away, but with some conversations I've had with other people now on the podcast and also in private, there's a difference. It seems not with everyone, but with some people, when presented with uh, two guys dancing together
Sure,
and two females dancing together,
sure,
that feels different levels of comfortable for
sure.
whatever reason, and also per style. So there's a spectrum. What style and which are you? And probably the most comfortable, I think that I've, small sample, anecdotal, but seems to be two women dressed in sort of the more traditional garb of leader follower
Mm,
doing ballroom.
yes,
That seems to be like on one side of like, that's fine, I guess, there's some pushback, but less. And on the other side, let's say, I guess probably in Latin or maybe smooth. I think Latin, you have two guys dancing together. And that seems to be, I don't know, more on the uncommon. I mean, I'm not sure where we are on the scale, but on the opposite of, on the far end of it.
interesting.
Yeah. And, it obviously smells of a kind of a double standard for whatever reason.
Yes.
But in some ways, sort of a knee jerk reaction. I don't see people being like, for this reason. It just kind of hits them. And I'm not sure this is revealing any sort of phobias or biases, and maybe, but I mean, do you have any feelings that or any, I mean, does it come up or?
I mean, lots of things have come up in terms of responses putting a same-sex product on a floor and lots of NDCA floors, and
In the open scholarship, it's still generally
I'm the only one.
whatever, right?
I mean,
It's non, like it's everyone against everyone. They don't have it
correct.
separated by
Yeah, I mean, they have
sex like they
gentlemen.
do in the other ones.
Well, they have some gentlemen's only stuff, and
Sure,
the
sure.
opens, which I think often is by default a ladies because no,
Right, right, right,
there's
right.
fewer gentlemen, and
Yeah.
fewer gentlemen enter anyway. They'll do the gentlemen's instead
Uh,
to have a better chance of placing higher. And I do. That's why I'm the only one that I think really does same sex.
mm.
So, it's right.
So what have
We
you
had
heard?
one couple.
Oh, we had I know
Ohio.
one couple join us in Ohio.
That was cool.
James Rapetti
There you go.
and Justin Miller was his partner as a student, and the student was the lead. Interestingly, in that case, and the follow was the pro.
Mm.
Um,
As an aside, can I add that he made a beautiful tribute to them as a trailblazer that had been there first. He made a beautiful Facebook post. I just thought it was so sweet the way you
Oh.
honored them for joining you.
I meant it.
That was cool.
I mean, I don't feel necessarily lonely. I mean, I've made awesome friends with my colleagues in that circuit. And
But why the decision to follow? Because you could have just led. So
I
yeah,
did. I mean, I competed as a lead, and I just wanted to. And it really started with an academic endeavor, and like from that kind of perspective,
Mm.
which I will credit to Lorinda Craven, who
Mm.
was very much about.
Shout out to Lorinda.
Shout out to Lorinda.
We love you.
She very much hounded early on understanding the perspective on the other side. I mean, you have to put yourself in partner's shoes to
Yeah.
get the full understanding of what it is to be 50-50 in a partner.
As teachers,
Or 100-100.
we have to learn both.
And it's
I suggest
required.
almost all my couples learn both. Yeah,
I mean, it's required for professionals.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
professional standing.
Yeah.
So
And,
it started with that, and then there was no opportunities in Missouri to really do it. It wasn't a practice situation. I found a couple that was willing to.
Mhm. Did anyone say no? Was it first people you asked? They were like,
That was it really was kind of well, I started taking with Modelina first, actually. So Joseph Latigue is my pro lead, and Modelina Barlam Latigue is my pro follow. And I started with her originally just doing smooth and standard, and competed a couple times. And I was kind of just like jokingly saying, hey, I really like want to learn how to follow, not only just for personal, I guess, emotional, psychological reasons, want to dance with another man necessarily, but it is part of that. But it's also from an academic standpoint, wanting to better understand what am I asking Madalena to do, what am I asking this lady to do when I'm turning her or giving her direction or rotation or amounts of progression, or amounts of energies through the body. I mean, I think you have to require, there has to be some sort of perspective on the other side. And so it started as very much casual, no intention of wanting to compete. But then we did, and it was well received by both results and placements in that first competition. And I just kept doing it, and found that I really loved it, and I loved being on the comp floor.
I mean, in one way, maybe people's stated preferences are, that's more uncomfortable. But if they're marking it in a way that you feel seems to be pretty fair, then revealed preferences in this sense, like in economics, they would say that's what matters, and it's not actually bothering them enough to guide the pen
No.
so far.
But I also have to say that, when we were working, Joseph and I were working, there's nothing about gender. There's nothing about looking like a lady or having a caricature or trying to like fit a societal view of what like a male-female role is in a ballroom couple. It's very much just like movement and quality of connection and understanding like the physics, the mechanics. And that's all it is. And really the only thing that I think where I push maybe the societal boundaries is in the costuming.
What do you wear a dress?
No, I don't wear a dress. I wear these. I actually have a great designer, Joey Santos, whose husband owns our studio. And so it's really convenient to have a dress designer in the back room. And so we've experimented. The first time we went out, I wore like just black tuxedo pants with a satin stripe. And he made me this velour green turtleneck and then made this almost like, I want to say 18th century Baroque French courtier's jacket with its poofy sleeves. That was received well. I wore that once and I was like, I want to make more. I want to do stones. And so the next outfit was like another version of that with pants and just a top. And then what we do now, the last three outfits have all been kind of colored pants. So it's actually like pants with a waistband. It's a proper custom pants that he's making. And they're layered with like lycra and mesh and a top of some sort that matches, so it seems like it's one seamless kind of jumpsuit look.
Is it a stance against the dress, or is it just what you like, or is it?
This is an interesting question.
Yeah, is it? I'm not that, because that's too easy. So what? Why? Because it's neither in
it's
that
neither.
sense, right?
I mean, I think if it's no different than a lady going to buy a dress, a lady that wants to, or someone that identifies that way, wants to go buy a custom dress and wants to design it and wants to have input on shape and fabric and things like that.
It's still kind of within a box of some sort, though, right? Like,
sure.
Yeah, right.
Sure. And in that way, I am traditional in some sorts. I mean, my approach to like what I like in terms of what smooth looks like, I like a very standard heavy base.
Sure.
So I like very traditional approaches to those things. And so I want to be able to not stand out in like a obtuse way or like a caricature way, but fit right in so they don't really notice that.
It'd be easy to go like, this is about.
Yeah. And I also don't want to wear matching suits, which I've gotten a lot of suggestions.
It's like Max Contrarian style, right? Like, yeah, right.
So I'm somewhere in the middle, kind of these hybrid.
I have that with one of my couples. I think the leader girl, she wants to wear a dress. And I thought, well, I mean, I guess I don't really care.
It's hard to dance in two dresses, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fabric to.
Yeah. She's like, I want sparkles. Oh, okay, maybe there's some kind of. But also, it sort of seemed like it was a lot at first, kind of like when Elon Musk made the Model S. He's like, we can't just come with a good electric car, because it's it's still seen as this other thing, and so it's the best. We need the best car.
Sure.
And it's got to win Motor Trend Awards or whatever as a car, and it all just happens to be electric, right? And so I thought if we go too far out of the traditional costuming, we're going to draw too much attention that I'm doing this different thing or whatever.
Sure.
And so if we can not try and hide it necessarily.
Well,
but,
I will say even
you
what
know.
I do now. I consider what I wore this weekend pretty conservative. It was just, there are some stones on it, but it's no different than like a male skate outfit, for example,
Right.
or a male Latin shirt.
I mean, maybe one day they do it in England.
Yeah, they do.
The young kids, the two girls in dresses.
Mhm.
So it seems to be there's a precedent, but we want to kind of baby step it
Sure.
into that, something like that here. Yeah. So I mean, you're doing even more. So that's
I think, and the thing is, like, what I do, which I think is now more subdued and part of it was a shock value, I think, when I first started.
right. That's what I was wondering.
A lot of people, it's a shock value, and sometimes that works well, and sometimes it doesn't work well for you, and it is what it is. I don't share. I'm here to dance.
Yeah.
That's all I care about in terms of the competitive endeavors.
Can you? I'm not sure if you can, but can you steel man your detractors in what the pushback is against this becoming a thing? Meaning, is there a side of people who are against men dancing with men outside of Argentine tango and mambo, by the way?
And now salsa.
Right. And let's forget about that. But like, is there any side of that were you in a different position, you might be able to say, all right, I think from what they're thinking, this is their reason, or why it's a good reason to avoid. Because I always like to see both sides, right? Like, I think your side
Sure.
is, I tend to lean, but it's always interesting to say, okay, I get the opposing argument.
I would counter that maybe with a
Sure.
hypothetical or an analogy in a way. People tolerate bad dancing in traditional partnerships all day long. Judges tolerate bad dancing from ladies, from guys in traditional partnerships all day long. It's part of their job.
To look for it, yeah.
That's what they're doing.
And they mark from the bottom up anyway. That's worse, less worse, less worse, less worse to the top.
And they tolerate bad costuming, bad hair, bad makeup, bad ill-fitting suits, miscolored socks, whatever it is. They tolerate that all day long in traditional partnerships. So, and they tolerate it and they respond to it. Let's say they have a relationship with those people. Maybe they go and say something and they address it in the way you address it, or they feel it's appropriate to address it. It should be no different, I think, in non-traditional partnerships where, like, why shouldn't these people? I've never come across a person that when they sit down and talk to me has actually given me any sort of reason to not accept it.
I'll give you a few then.
Okay, go ahead. Not one with logic, at least.
Well, they find their sort of ethical or logical center, and they kind of build out from that. And there isn't really, it's hard to find that is necessarily unethical or wrong. So it's like, if that's your position and from there it's consistent logically, fine, we disagree, But so let's say one of them is on the sense of tradition, right? Which I think we could say this style lends, at least I think it lends to tradition in some sense, because that informs what the hell the dance is supposed to be in the first place. Otherwise, it's off to the races with whatever you want it to be, right? So, and there's only so far that say that can be pushed before it's no longer that dance traditionally.
But in terms of movement, or in terms of the gender of the partner?
Right. So it's like, it's fine. Venus, like, fair enough. Where do we draw the line as far as what is the tradition and what is not? And it's a step. And then the next step, there's this sort of like death of 1,000 cuts proposition, such that if this, then the next, and then tango is waltz, and we're all doing, Lindy or whatever, in that.
Sure.
If we don't, like, at some point we've got to have, no, this is the tradition and we can't move past that. That one stays.
Yeah.
So that's one. I'll tell you another one, which is less comfortable perhaps.
Sure.
Which is just business, right? And let's say you're a greedy capitalist, and so money is what you want.
Sure.
And you just run the numbers, or at least what you think the numbers are, and you say, okay, if we allow same sex, more entries.
Yes.
Great, right?
Yeah.
Or what it looks like for me is that people that would otherwise quit dancing,
yes,
they stay now because they can dance with a partner who also would have quit dancing if one of them was willing to lead.
Sure.
So more people, right? However, there's a percentage, unknown percentage of the current base that would find that so uncomfortable that they would leave. And if that number looks higher than the people that would come in, just from a business perspective, like just
There's no way to quantify it, though, realistically speaking. I mean, legitimate
polling data, perhaps.
But
would you leave, etc. Right? But yeah, you
I
would
would
know.
And I would quantify it like the extreme opposite view that let's say the 10% that are so deeply offended that they're going to walk out the door. Fuck them. And truly, the upside potential of the bigger pie by allowing more people to play is a way bigger number in my mind than the people that we might lose.
I would rather, instead of say fuck them immediately, just be like, how can we not? You know,
Well, I mean,
obviously.
and this is what I'll say. They tolerate. We have so many. I mean, very. Not to say that they sit there and dance, in different partnerships, but we have champions that are gay. We have champions that are lesbian. We have judges on panels that people. I mean, if we're going to talk about if it's about identity and expressing your identity openly, and that's what that 10% is offended by. They tolerate it all day, and they respect these people, and they are buddy, and they kiss up, and they fawn over these people that express themselves openly in that way all the time.
Yeah,
so they do tolerate it, and they know how to tolerate it.
Yeah,
it's a power play.
It's not in my face. He's still dancing with a woman. What he does behind closed doors is yada yada.
I think there are plenty that show
it's
open doors. But.
It's like, I've heard a bunch of different reasons without being judgy, right? It is fair that yes, you can say that it's not actually quantifiable. You may be right. But sort of the way to think about it is, were it, that's not entirely logical, right? If you just care about numbers. And the addition doesn't account for the exit.
Is this in the context of the United States industry? Because then I think numbers is what drives it. Honestly, I mean, you can't get around it.
Right. So in some sense, that's, okay.
And it's part of why I think
ethically, maybe it's questionable. But logically and business wise, like, fine. Yeah, maybe. I
mean, I think from a numbers perspective, it's a lot of the reason why initially me doing this in Pro-Am was they had really no choice to accept it, because the competition's not going to say no to entries.
Yeah.
This person's bringing money into the industry somehow.
Yeah.
They're not going to say no to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe makes them uncomfortable, but that can be felt by me. I've been to a lot of competitions all over the country now doing same sex, and I can feel immediately what the environment's like. And I just, can take a mental note and know that that's not a place where necessarily I want to go back to.
Mm.
And that's what that is. And people do that all the time, regardless, for whatever reason. I don't see myself, and this is personal, but personal perspective, I don't see myself operating any way differently than any other student in the Pro-Am industry. Invest my money in my lessons and my coaches, competitions, and rinse and repeat. You just work hard, and you.
Have you had any competitors saying something like, well, you're a man and you're powerful and all this, and that's an advantage in some sense. So.
I have
because it is interesting to consider for a second. Do we have a similar dynamic to, let's say, swimming, the other transgender things? Where there might be a real, perhaps, argument against what's fair. Maybe but I don't think, to me, that one doesn't hold quite as much water, because if I'm dancing with a follower, like, I can only dance as much as that follower can handle, or I'm just going to steal, like, so the extra power I have is irrelevant.
Well, it's not relevant, and this is how I respond to it, because I have had to think about this.
Okay.
And it really comes down to how the judging is calculating the skating system and the rules of the skating system, the 11 rules. It is set such that the judges do not have to give a reason. All they're doing is giving ordinal places, or non-ordinal recalls from the previous rounds.
Yeah.
They don't have to give a reason. So a judge is not restricted to giving a ranking based on a predetermined criterion, whether it's speed, the time which from when you touch that.
We all think and hope so, but not.
Do we, though? I like having I personally don't. I like having a very diverse panel of different thoughts and different approaches.
No, I hate that.
Yeah, you would have everyone do the same steps at the same time.
Yeah, I like
starting in different squares.
Well, no, I would like both programs.
No, fair.
Like in Japan, where you're all doing a minute of the same choreography, and then the gates open. And then they used to have with the required program and the artistic program, like in figure skating.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's nice to see apples to apples, and you see something different from when it's the artist side blooming.
But inherently in smooth, I think it is
So hard.
inherently
Yeah,
an
it's hard.
individual style approach to the entire. And
Yes. Sorry. No, I think I first want to say, like, oh my goodness, the up and coming same sex couples that will come behind you are so lucky that you are so
oh, thank you.
eloquent, have such
There's a lot of editing
ability
going on.
to like deflect bullets, and your skin must be so thick. And man, are you handling it well? Let me just start with
Oh,
that. And
well,
like,
thank you.
incredible. But I think there's the thing that's interesting for me to look at is like, it's actually a humanity thing where as a species, we're kind of like herd animals, right? Like
Sure.
everybody is actually kind of always trying to corral everyone into these predictable groups, right? And you are not a herd animal, right? You, in a way, like if you think about it, I don't want to say renegade, but you're certainly not conforming at every turn, right? And I think that everybody should do that in their own small or big ways. And in the ballroom dance world, it's actually instantly chopped down, right? It's like, that's different. Nope. Oh, that's super different. Hell no. And I feel like it's so wonderful that you're doing something refreshing and different. And I'm just so impressed, and I've been watching it. The quality speaks for itself. Your elegance in communicating the points about it makes so much sense. And I would just say that my view as a pro-am teacher, right, and I'm in pro-am competitions all the time, I think the biggest problem is actually not a money problem, but kind of a time problem, where in my scholarship, if I have me with female student in a huge field of 24 couples, and some of those couples are just even the different dynamic of male student, female pro versus the opposite, that's even apples and oranges. And that, in my view, is not a fair and easy to judge competition. And it would be optimized if they were separate events. And when you're out there, it's not fair to you to be up against me with my girl. And it's not even a fair thing. It's just like different. They should, in my view, be different events. And I do think that if there was more time and it was more lucrative, it would actually be incredible to have you plus full quarterfinal of same-sex couples in the same dynamic. Then it's an actual comparison.
Sure.
It's very difficult to jump across even the dynamic when it's not separated in the pro and the am dynamic.
So you would be for
I would be for
another division.
I would
for
be
just
for
same-sex.
separating the divisions
Huh.
because it's more fair, I think. And I think that it's very
So
difficult
what's
to judge.
unfair?
But
Yeah.
but if I could just finish the thought,
Sorry.
there is no way to do that now because
Correct.
you'd be a one couple final.
Correct.
And
Well, now
so
too.
you have to blaze this trail, right? And
Yeah.
hopefully gain enough traction against all the detractors to where there is enough demand that you do have a semifinal.
Correct.
And I also feel that way even in the dynamic of like male students. Like I love it when it's a male student with female pro
Gents
semifinal.
only,
That's a better competition.
or leaders only. I
So
guess.
you don't
Yeah,
like the
however-
you don't like the
It's not that I don't like it. I just think it's
mixed
like
pot.
I'm always like, dude, if there's a guy with a female pro
Yeah.
beating male teacher with female amateur,
Yeah.
he should be like 4 places higher, in my view. I think it's more difficult
If he's
But
to
are
beat me.
but are you expecting the judges to look at? Are they judging it a couple, or are they judging the student?
Again, like you said, Judge A says this, Judge B says that. Like, there's no way to really know.
I think there's some guideline on in the syllabus. It should be the student, and then the open you're allowed to judge as you see fit.
Right.
Oh, wait.
Or
Okay,
something
that's
that's
true.
single dance isn't a championship, like
Championships,
multis
yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
But-
Which is a bit of, I think, mental legwork that may not always get done. You know, it's kind of.
But like, I mean, if you let's strip it bare back down.
Yeah.
Because still that is tinged in a way, if you're looking at it from a judge's perspective, I think that is in a way, not homophobic or
Mhm.
transphobic, but that is a traditional lens that it's looking through.
Mhm, mhm.
If you strip everything back, it is just two people sharing energy in a coordinated direction. Or
Ooh, energy.
I love that. That is true.
I mean, that is all it is. Two bodies moving. And this is, I will say this, you have to consider sometimes center of gravity, but you have to do that with everybody in terms of like, where do they carry weight? If it's a larger person that has a lot more, maybe a buff guy with a lot of weight up here versus weight in here versus, a lady having certain anatomical parts. I mean, yes, you have to make certain considerations maybe with the mechanics and the physics of it, but it is just two bodies.
So but it's interesting.
Has nothing to do with the gender.
Fair is always an interesting word to me because, well, I would say that even if you had a diverse panel
Mhm.
and you like that, I mean, I don't put words in your mouth, but something about that idea is appealing to you.
I like
Where do we-
that comes from
where do we-
multiple approaches. And
Where do we have to say that it's fair, right? Like the criteria, is it just like if you have a big enough democracy, then you'll get some sort of fair result? Or
I don't think, I mean, in terms of like separating the events, I think there needs to be separate events. There needs to be consideration. There'll be a learning experience, and certainly we need to learn from the Europeans and how they structured their same-sex events and circuits and industry, which is pretty well developed and like pretty popular. There's got to be learning to do in terms of how do we structure it? What are the rules? Are there certain events that are specifically allowing switch leading? Are there certain events that are
no?
gents only? Are there certain events that are traditional only? And anyone, I personally just hope that there's never a restriction based on gender and roles and the roles that they're playing. So like, let's say
Roles, you mean gender roles, society-wise, not leader-follower?
no, partnership. Yes. Society wise, when it comes to partnership roles, yes, I think if you're going to do switch leading, which I don't do, my
That's a whole
choreography
other
is-
category of
That is,
Yeah.
I think that belongs in its own place because
Right.
I think it deserves its own place as a matter of like respect and giving it its own time
Uh-huh.
and its own area to develop and to
Yeah.
catch its own fire.
Yeah.
And because that is, I think, truly different than a lot of ways that we'll be asked from. But then again, the caveat, I mean, if you look at history, there are plenty of strong women you look at choreography. I mean, there are moments where she is the one in control at the time or in control of the direction or in control of, and people will, say, okay, maybe that was a very dominating energy from her in that moment. But that happens all the time anyways in open choreography.
These words are way less relevant, if not irrelevant, in ballroom. Like the partner being dominant, it's if we don't talk. I mean, some people kind of like that word, maybe in tango some way, but it's not I would say the gender roles in the distinction outside of the costume, because even like okay, with the posture, something about that is supposed to be more male and female. Maybe I'm not.
I mean, how do you
It
define that?
Could be
I
right.
got titties.
Yeah.
I'm chucked up. Like, what am I gonna say? Like,
But it's just that being sexy, playing hard to get, all that stuff, it's not there. Meaning, dancing can be done without it there, right? In some sense, right? We have a whole style where it's the most traditional in a way,
sure.
where it's almost the masculine, feminine side seems not irrelevant, but like say the least relevant of the other ones, let's say, or it comes in less often, certainly than Latin, maybe rhythm, and then maybe less so than so. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think certainly less so than smooth. I mean, I see
Yeah.
smooth Latin and rhythm whenever there's partnership, whenever you have like level changes, when you have position changes, I think that inherently, as they've developed in history, through history, it's been developed in a traditional way
Yeah.
with males leading and females following.
I think there has to be something to be said for like when we're in closed dance position. Sorry, it's gonna work. My head is to the left, your head's to the left, right?
Yeah.
We go through the whole cup without seeing each other, potentially.
Just for the first 4 bars. Just
Okay, but just like we literally don't potentially even see each other's eyes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Fair.
therefore,
But
if
then we're
we-
attached like
but his point, if we do look at each other's eyes, there's got to be
Yeah, maybe in tango you
a
have this
narrative.
a little bit.
There's got to be more of the thing that you were deeming was important. The dynamics of the
Sure.
storytelling behind the movement, because
Well,
there is actually
I
interaction.
think there's interaction, but then that's just interaction. That doesn't have to be
Yeah, Lena
sexual.
called
It
it.
doesn't have to be.
Lena called it something like. Wasn't even pursuit. It was relationship,
Yeah.
Yes.
relating. Right. It wasn't even a particular way
Conversation.
necessarily. Yeah, something like that.
But
Casual word.
this is interesting. I think that the thing that I would love to get your take on. You're in Ohio Star Ball. competing, you don't make that final.
This year, yeah.
You should have made that final,
Thank you. I
in my
appreciate it.
view, but you don't, because there is still perhaps, and I don't know, this is speculation, the dynamic that, oh, that's different, I'm not going to mark it. Perhaps.
You think?
Let me finish the thought.
All right.
I'm saying you can remove all of that ambiguity from the whole equation if it's just a floor of same-sex couples in the same dynamic.
Sure.
It's like, okay, I got to judge all 6 of these couples. I don't get to say I don't prefer that. They're all doing it. And it's a more fair contest
I agree with
for
that.
you.
It's just not practical.
It's not practical
Right
yet.
now.
It's not practical yet, but you're blazing that trail. And I think the getting there will be painful. It will be biased, and there's going to be all this ambiguity, but it's an important trail to blaze. And that's what we're currently talking about, is like how that is being blazed.
And
Do
I
you,
will say,
do you
go
think
ahead.
the masculine feminine dynamic, insofar as it is part of the performance? Because in some ways, if we say that's relevant,
It's not relevant though. I mean, how many?
right? So then
how
we
many
then we have to say it's irrelevant,
Well, how many straight guys
and then we
are
say,
feminine and metrosexual and mannerisms, even on the floor? I mean, we ask, if you really inherently look at it from, like, let's say an American gender role traditional things, you look at anyone doing ballroom that's a little bit fruity.
so then it's
I mean, like, isn't that from the outside perspective? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, I understand that it is truly, like, actually it is very conservative and very traditional, but like from the
and
American
some people
perspective-
love that part about it, right? It was the initial draw,
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
some sense. So then it's is that going to be eventually? Could that be that dynamic is irrelevant now? We don't
Hopefully.
see it in the performance at all, and it's just
getting that way. I mean, so I hear a lot of feedback, and unsolicited, solicited, and I love it all because it's just perspective, and it's an honor to have affected someone enough for them to find the time to come and talk to me outside of the ballroom.
Mm.
I've had a number of people that, judges that in the past would have said or come up after the competition and given me a long list. I would like to see this instead of this, this instead of this, this instead of this, this instead of this, which is their kind of way of saying, this is why I marked you poorly. If you look at the marks,
Mm.
And I've had those same people later on, a year later, year and a half later, 2 years now, actually, 2 years later, say, I really enjoyed it. I didn't notice that there was a difference in, I didn't notice that you were different because of your gender or because of you, having a beard, a light beard.
The one thing that I think is cool, that's also hard now, you have to deal with, is the fact that you've been slotted, let's say, in whatever spot you're currently slotted in the mind of these individuals. And where you were slotted when you first started was worse than where you are now.
I think so.
And the only reason that is because you are actually improving your product of movement so much and so consistently that wherever they put you today, if you keep consistently improving your product and your movement, they have to mark it better. And you're on this beautiful track.
I appreciate that.
That will hopefully, if you can persevere and stick with it and continue to
will.
improve,
I will.
hopefully it is going to force better results, which will force it into the eye even harder.
I mean,
And
this
that's
is
all on the sweat of you and your
Thank
wonderful
you.
partner's back.
Thank you.
That's
And I will
badass.
say it's an entire team, takes a village. We've got
Give them love. Who is the whole team?
Okay, so number one, obviously Joseph and Madalena. Shout out to the people that have to fucking deal with. Sorry, I mean they really have to
He
tolerate.
said he wasn't going to swear
really.
when we were coming.
Everyone that
Good job. You lasted a long time.
Everyone that knows me in reality knows that was a feat that we've been sitting here for I don't know how long.
You made it for a long time.
But like they have to tolerate a lot from me, and so shout out to them for sticking with me, believing with me.
What do you mean tolerate a lot? Are you a shitty student? What does that mean?
I mean, I ask a lot of questions and I demand a lot of information, and
Isn't that the dream?
That's the
sometimes?
dream.
A lot of
Yeah,
students
that's right.
don't ask questions. They just kind of,
I don't
someone
know.
who
Depends
someone
on,
who's
depends on
seeking.
the teaching style.
All right, fair enough. Sure.
Well, I bet you.
and I'm annoying, and I take a lot of lessons, so you get sick of me.
I bet you if all of
Yeah, well,
those
no one
teachers
likes
were
annoying.
sitting here, they'd be saying that those qualities that you
So-
thought were bad or they're like their favorite thing about you. But carry on.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Don't be annoying.
I have other qualities. I just don't want to get to the drama of it. But shout out to them because it takes a lot of patience, and I think it took a risk, certainly in a way, I think it took a risk for Joseph to have initially even done that and been okay with taking a student and entering, trusting me to do the work and to follow the leadership that we have at that studio, including the studio owners, my main coach, Harmony Monroe, and then we have visiting coaches, that come in. The list is too long. You know who you are. I love and appreciate everything that I have been given from like literally my hero. Let me just preface by saying I'm freaking out by that I'm sitting next to Mayo Alanen because like this is like my hero. This is like in a way that is like has tied with I was very early on inebriatedly trying to figure out what ballroom was and looking like pro videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And like it was watching something of him and I was sitting there just like crying my eyes out.
Plus he's handsome.
Nice. Yeah,
Unfairly handsome.
10 out of 10.
Jesus.
awkward.
Yeah.
Very nice. That's nice of you.
So like the fact that I've been able to have feedback and support from like great people like this, great dancers that have, added so much to the American industry makes me feel very welcome. It makes me feel totally like I don't have an issue with feeling safe anywhere that I go. I always feel like I have support. I always feel like there's someone on a judging panel that I know enjoys the product and will fight for me if there's any sort of chit chatter in the back. It takes a village. It really does.
I have an interesting question
Go
along
ahead.
the lines of that. This guy has earned, in my view, the most important thing one can earn, which is the respect of his peers.
I love my peers.
You have so much respect of your peers, like
I love them.
the people in your immediate
The other people that
atmosphere,
compete against you, or
Mhm.
what do you mean?
competitors, everyone in this final that he's in, just love him and all of the
Love the
top
job.
pros in the
You think that
different
would change-
styles.
You think that would change if you won?
Probably they would
I
love
don't
hate
know.
you. I don't know.
I don't know.
I
mean,
like you
whatever.
as three.
I will not speak to how the open A smooth.
We'll talk one day
Final has-
once that
They'll
happens.
love you. They will love you.
Once that happens.
And let's change that to if you win to when you win.
Sure.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then also want to ask this question.
Okay.
The detractors, I don't know, but I would imagine that there's a line that one could find that is age-based. And that you have the support of younger people, potentially as a very like stereotypical sentence.
Sure.
And the less support of perhaps older generation.
Well, older people skew conservative.
Perhaps older people skew
Perhaps,
conservative. And I would argue that the good news is the older people are going to die sooner.
No, but
The
young
people that
now,
you have the respect of are going to be running the show.
Yeah, but young people
like-
will eventually be conservative as well.
Okay,
You know,
that's actually a
this,
fair point.
and this happens. So this is an interesting thing. Is
That's not a true trend.
You are
I'm sorry,
potentially
but
making
I'm sorry.
our
That's not a
evolution
true
less
trend.
conservative.
that older
People do not become socially conservative as they get older. In fact, I would say hopefully people that are living outside of maybe a small, very tight community and have any sort of world view in this very diverse country that we live in, I think, and I'm not going to say conservative, liberal, anything like that, left, right. They tend to become more humane and they see much more about humanity in every type of person, no matter where they come from.